In this video, I'll be focusing on a specific aspect of the Knight Commander build I'm using in my current playthrough, Vital Strike. There are several ways one might acquire Vital Strike. Ordinarily, it's gained through feats: Vital Strike, Improved Vital Strike, and Greater Vital Strike. These become available upon reaching base attack bonuses of 6, 11, and 16. These thresholds are far from arbitrary. Indeed, they align precisely with the points at which a character typically gains their second, third, and fourth attacks. After all, Vital Strike is designed to replace a full attack, and the feats thus multiply weapon damage in a way that mirrors this regular progression. Mythic Vital Strike is indispensable. It multiplies the flat damage bonuses by the same amount as the weapon damage. This is crucial as you approach the mid and later stages of the game, as weapon damage does not scale well. Only full base attack bonus characters or warpies who can substitute their class level for base attack bonus requirements can access all 3 levels of Vital Strike. Classes with 3/4 base attack bonus progression cap at 15, and those with half base attack bonus progression fall even further short. Now, for full base attack bonus classes, the points where these feats become available, Vital Strike is often weaker than a normal full attack. Which begs the question, when would you go for Vital Strike on such a class? The answer lies in builds where one can pair Vital Strike, a standard action, with a strong move action. A prime example would be a freebooter, particularly when the majority of levels are dedicated to this class, as Freebooter's Bane. The essential and the scaling ability in this Ranger subclass is a move action. Another way to acquire Vital Strike is through Rowdy Rogue. This particular subclass grants the Vital Strike feats at level 1, 6, and 11, so quite a bit earlier, and without requiring the expenditure of feats. In addition, it provides Vital Force at level 1, allowing the rogue to make better use of its sneak attack dice when using Vital Strike. However, beyond these features, the class itself is somewhat bare. It also does not possess any innate move action that would pair effectively with Vital Strike. As a selfish damage dealer, the Rowdy Rogue inevitably finds itself compared to a full base attack bonus classes such as the Slayer, and past the early game, this comparison does not favor the rogue. The third method involves dipping. One might dip into Rowdy for regular Vital Strike and Vital Force. Very good for classes that have access to sneak attack dice. Actually, it's best to omit this dip otherwise. But the most important dip, which requires the character to be a spellcaster class, is into Loremaster. This class provides access to Greater Vital Strike by passing prerequisites through its secret ability. With Loremaster, Greater Vital Strike can be acquired as early as level 6 or level 7 if you have taken that dip into Rowdy. Keep in mind that regular Vital Strike is still required to unlock the Mythic version. Naturally, dipping does have its drawbacks, including a reduction in base attack bonus and a delay in progression through your primary class. However, even with this delay, most classes offer more overall than Rowdy, including the possibility of a valuable move action ability to pair with Vital Strike. Vital Strike through Loremaster is generally done with a 3/4 base attack bonus class rather than a half base attack bonus class, as they usually have more features, the former have more features oriented towards martial combat. Also, while for Vital Strike, base attack bonus is less important since secondary attacks are irrelevant, it still contributes to improving your chance to hit. Let's take a more thorough look at the aforementioned dips. As previously mentioned, the Rowdy Rogue subclass grants both Vital Strike and Vital Force. In addition to these, Rowdy also provides a sneak attack die and proficiency with martial weapons. Vital Force enhances your Vital Strike by adding 2d6 precision damage per sneak attack die, and this applies even on non-sneak attacks. On a sneak attack, however, you gain both this bonus and the standard 1d6 sneak die damage, resulting in a total of 3d6 precision damage per sneak attack die. This makes Rowdy exceptionally potent in the early stages of the game. Loremaster is a prestige class, and as such comes with a few prerequisites. First, you need 2 feats, a Metamagic feat. Any will suffice except Intensified Spell, which has to be oversight by the developers. And skill-focused knowledge, either Arcana or World. You also need access to 3rd level Divine or Arcane spells. Do note that Alchemists are neither Arcane nor Divine casters, as their spells are classified as extracts. Loremaster is a half base attack bonus class that maintains spellcasting progression, with its most notable feature being its secrets. These can be selected at every odd level, though the same type of secret cannot be chosen twice. The available secrets include Cleric, Wizard or Druid spells, Combat or Wizard feats, Rogue talents, which also include Combat tricks, which are combat feats, and lastly, a selection of secrets that grant +2 to various saving throws. What makes Loremaster particularly interesting is that these feats and talents bypass prerequisites, meaning you can acquire greater Vital Strike without meeting its usual feat or base attack bonus requirements. Now let's take a look at the classes that can access 3rd level Divine or Arcane spells, and whether they can also acquire sneak attack dice. Prepared casters can unlock 3rd level spells at level 5, the earliest possible. Wizards can cast Sense Vitals, a personal buff that grants 1 sneak attack die for every 3 caster levels. Shadow Shaman, a Shaman subclass, gains sneak attack dice at level 3 and every 3 levels thereafter. An advantage of classes like these, meaning with inherent sneak attack, over those that gain it through Sense Vitals, is that they can still acquire Sense Vitals via Loremaster secret Wizard spell. This allows them to stack Sense Vitals with their inherent sneak attack dice for even greater damage potential. Spontaneous casters gain access to their 3rd level spells at level 6, and half casters unlock 3rd level spells at level 7. The Eldritch Scoundrel has both sneak attack dice and access to Sense Vitals, though being a rogue subclass prevents them from dipping into Rowdy, so doesn't even matter. War Priests and their subclass, Cult Leader, can also acquire greater Vital Strike through feats, as their special class feature allows them to count class levels as base attack bonus for feat prerequisites. Warrior casters unlock 3rd level spells at level 10. The only warrior caster that truly benefits from Vital Strike is the Freebooter, a ranger subclass. Freebooters can obtain greater Vital Strike either through Loremaster at level 11 or by progressing the class and meeting the prerequisites at level 16. The most popular choices for this kind of Loremaster Vital Strike build are Shadow Shaman and Cult Leader. Vital Strike used to be better in the past, primarily due to several exploits and unintended interactions that have since been addressed. Let's begin with one of the older examples, critical hits. Critical hits used to be multiplicative with Vital Strike, but this has since been patched, and they are now additive. What does this mean? Quite simply, with Mythic Greater Vital Strike, you deal 4 times weapon damage and 4 times other damage, flat bonus damage. Let's assume you have a critical multiplier of 3. Before the patch, you would have dealt 12 times of both on a crit. Now you only deal 7. Cleaving Finish remains unchanged. If you kill an enemy with Vital Strike, the subsequent cleave attacks will use the Vital Strike multiplier as well. Cleaving Shot, however, has been patched and behaves differently depending on whether it triggers on kill or on a crit. On a kill, it functions as expected. On a crit, while the Vital Strike multiplier isn't applied, the additional damage from Vital Force still carries over. Ever Cold. Ever Cold is a heavy crossbow, available in Act 3 with the Midnight Isles DLC. It fires 2 bolts simultaneously on its first attack each round. Used to be the second bolt inherited everything from the first one. Now, Vital Force still applies to the second bolt, but not the Vital Strike multiplier. If someone runs a Vital Force crossbow build, Ever Cold is a large reason as to why. Jinx. Unlike Ever Cold, its extra damage is weapon damage only. It also requires special circumstances to trigger. Once its extra damage benefited from Vital Strike from the Vital Strike multiplier, but now it only deals basic weapon damage. Frankly, it's a rather underwhelming weapon. Aspect of the Colossus. Previously, this allowed you to use Vital Strike as a move action, enabling 2 Vital Strikes per round. Combined with the pre-patch Ever Cold, this made Vital Strike extremely powerful in the late game as a demon. Unfortunately, this too has been patched. Once you have secured Greater Vital Strike, what other features do you get? Power Attack, and eventually Mythic Power Attack, is a natural choice once you acquire Mythic Vital Strike. However, before this point, Vital Strike does not multiply the bonus damage from Power Attack, making the penalty outweigh the benefit. Focus Strike is the obvious next follow-up, as it applies to your first attack, and given that Vital Strike restricts you to a single attack per round, it effectively nullifies the Power Attack penalty entirely. Next is the Cleaving Finish line. To use improved Cleaving Finish, you need to have Cleave and Cleaving Finish, but not Greater Cleave. So you could bypass that through Loremaster with an investment of 2 additional levels into Loremaster. Loremaster grants you access to a maximum of 2 combat feats, 1 through the combat feat secret and 1 via the rogue secret. That said, if you are also aiming for Vital Sense through Loremaster, 5 levels would be required, a rather substantial commitment. For ranged builds, the options are far more limited. Deadly Aim functions similarly to Power Attack, but offers less damage. And there is no equivalent to Focus Strike, nor is there a feat with the same synergy as Cleaving Finish. One of the key advantages of Vital Strike is that it requires only a standard action, much like most spells, leaving you free to perform a move action. Move actions come in many forms. Some are available to any character, others are specific to certain classes, and yet others come from mythic paths. Any character can use a move action to move, swap weapons, or consume a potion. The other 2 options are generally of limited value, but the ability to move, without losing out on a lot of damage, is quite useful. For a melee character, the advantages are obvious. You need the move action to close the distance to your target. This is why abilities like Bounce and the use of mounts are so powerful. They allow you to close the gap and still execute a full attack. Vital Strike offers something similar, but more flexible, as its damage isn't tied to your move action at all. For a ranged character, it enables kiting, most effective in the early game, before enemies have access to haste, and mainly on larger maps with ample space. A perfect example of this would be the Market Square in Act 1. Chant and Cackle are hexes from the Witch and Shaman classes, enabling the extension of certain other hexes for an additional round. While hexes like Fortune and Protective Luck can be extended outside of combat, that's arguably an exploit. If one wishes to play more by the book, using Chant or Cackle during combat becomes necessary. Another powerful hex, Evil Eye, can be extended using these as well. Typically, Shaman is the preferred choice for a Vital Striker. With 3/4 base attack bonus and personal buffs and abilities, such as those provided by the Battle Spirit and its associated hexes, it's well suited for a martial character. Furthermore, the ability to select a meta magic feat in place of a hex makes it easy to fill the prerequisites for an early Greater Vital Strike through Loremaster. There is this one issue that arises when combining Charmed with Vital Strike. Hexes are typically cast just before or at the onset of combat, as the ideal approach is to debuff enemies before you attack them, not afterwards. Consequently, you will need to use Chant at the beginning of every following turn to maintain the hex's effect. Unfortunately, this constant use of Chant leaves no opportunity to actually move and close the distance between you and your target. The issue can be solved by either using a ranged weapon or by acquiring a mount. Shaman can access a mount via a Nature Spirit at level 16, or from level 1 as the Wildland Shaman subclass. Before turning our attention to Feint, it is essential to first consider the changes to Setter defenses. Had it remained unchanged, Feint would serve little purpose, as the old version of Setter defenses would be unquestionably superior. While I don't believe that the wording of Setter defenses itself was altered, it now functions as written. This means that you must first successfully strike your opponent before the flat-footed condition is applied. This change is a substantial nerf for all martial builds, but it's particularly bad for Vital Strike. As Vital Strike involves only a single attack per round, Setter defenses now does nothing. For full attack builds, they can still make use of Setter defenses. If they choose to keep it, which is now debatable, landing the first hit becomes paramount. This elevates the feat first strike, which negates the power attack penalty on the first attack, and the spell True Strike, which gives a plus 20 bonus on the first attack roll and ignores concealment. This in turn may offer greater incentive to field both Vital Strike and full attack characters together on the same team with a Sensei, a class capable of distributing True Strike to the entire party. Previously, Sensei was favored by teams whose damage dealers consisted mostly of Vital Strike builds and Raycasters. In any case, Setter defenses has been significantly nerfed, making it worthwhile to explore alternative methods of denying opponents their dexterity bonus to armor class. One such alternative is Feint. Feint requires a successful bluff check, with the DC being similar to, or higher than, when the TAR uses the perception option, a demoralize check. Players familiar with demoralize builds, such as those using Trickster Persuasion 3, know that consistently hitting the DC is quite achievable with some moderate investment. However, there are far more items, feats, and class abilities that boost Intimidate compared to Bluff, who in turn has an edge over Mobility, which is used with Slayer's Feint. Basically, to make Feint viable, you'll need a significant investment into Charisma and in feats, as well as items or class features to support it. Furthermore, Feint imposes a feat tax in the form of Combat Expertise, which has a 13 intelligence requirement. This creates an awkward situation where you need to invest into Charisma, alongside Dexterity or Strength for your Vital Strike, while also ensuring you meet the intelligence prerequisite for Combat Expertise. Given the considerable investment involved, it only makes sense to go for Final Feint, as dedicating all these resources to benefit just one character doesn't make much sense. Ideally, this character should also be a ranged attacker using ranged Feint. Similar to hexes, the objective is to debuff the enemy before your entire party attacks. And you also want to avoid having to move just to feint another target. This setup is quite expensive in terms of feats. 4 or 5 for the feint line, plus an additional feats to improve your bluff checks. The big question is whether mobility can be scaled sufficiently for Slayer's Feint to work consistently against all enemies, including bosses. If the answer is no, and thus a heavy charisma investment is required, the build becomes somewhat clumsy. You would need dexterity to hit with your weapon, charisma for bluff, and at least certain intelligence for combat expertise. While you could use headbands to meet the intended requirement, this still means you can't completely dump it. It would make more sense to run a charisma-based spellcaster focused on DC spells instead. Consider the Court Poet, for instance. This class is a charisma-based caster with access to the Bard spell list, which includes many enchantment spells, and its primary class ability grounds intelligence and charisma bonuses to the entire party, including the poet himself. There is an awkward aspect to building the Court Poet as an enchantment caster. The poet gains skull talents, which are rogue talents, and these do not provide access to wizard feats. Instead, they offer special rogue and combat feats, which are not particularly useful for spellcasting. However, and here it all comes nicely together, the faint line of each are classified as combat feats. The primary drawback of this build is that the Court Poet is a spontaneous caster. As such, metamagic spells become full round actions, meaning you cannot use them alongside feint, which requires a move action. The third option would be a Bard with the Diva feint line. Like a Court Poet, the Bard is a charisma-based caster. I won't be going into the details of those feats and that line, as we've already ventured somewhat off topic. Let's continue down the list. Freebooter's Bane. If one chooses to play a freebooter as one's main class, he Vital Strike build is the only sensible option. It's not like you can play him as a spellcaster and without using Freebooter's Bane, if Freebooter is straight up worse than the other Ranger subclasses. As for a 5-level splashed Freebooter, whether this is worth pursuing, it depends. It's absolutely not worth to build around by itself, however, if you've selected Vital Strike for its early game strength and lack a coherent late game plan, taking 5 levels into Freebooter may be an out. Slayer Studied Target. Studied Target becomes a swift action at level 7. Given that Slayer would gain Vital Strike just 1 level prior, this is not a great reason to get it for. If, for whatever reason, you decided to go into Slayer after starting as Rowdy, whether to roleplay or you really want a strong early game as the Slayer, you'd use the combination in those first 7 levels. And have some other plan for Vital Strike later, or better yet, abandon it altogether. I really don't believe in Slayer Vital Strike. Camouflage, Hide in Plain Sight, and Shrouded Step. These abilities allow one to hide or go invisible during combat. Of the 3, Shrouded Step is the best one, as it grounds invisibility, which is a substantial boost to stealth. It's also available to earliest. The most apparent application for these abilities lies in solo cheese builds, where one attacks and then immediately hides on the same round. Such builds often use Wits of the Veil for Shrouded Step, allowing them to bypass regular combat entirely from level 3 onwards. So 2 levels into Witch and 1 level into Rowdy. However, even in a full party setup, in-combat stealth can be quite useful. Consider encounters where the Knight Commander or vulnerable backline characters are being targeted. If your Knight Commander is particularly fragile, in-combat stealth offers a method of protection. Additionally, there is a notable synergy with the Assassin's Alter Ego ability, which, in its current implementation, causes enemies to be flat-footed to your attacks as long as the mirror image copy remains intact. Unfortunately, even weak enemies can destroy this copy with a single hit, and this ability does not work in combination with the mirror image spell. In-combat stealth can protect both you and your copy. Lastly, being invisible or undetected enables sneak and flat-footed attacks, although greater invisibility achieves much the same. Teleport abilities. The class-based teleport abilities that use move actions are somewhat underwhelming and have limited uses. Demon Charge, the first mythic ability on this list, is a different matter. It is limitless, independent from Demon Rage, and deals some area of effect damage. It synergizes beautifully with a melee Vital Strike build. Aspect of the Colossus is another strong demon ability. This one does require Demon Rage. This aspect allows most standard actions to be used as move actions, enabling Vital Strike to be paired with another standard action. Mobility 2 from Trickster. The idea here is to use your move action, your regular move action, to provoke attacks of opportunity. In my view, this strategy works better with the mounts. Theoretically, I haven't tried this build in any form, admittedly. While most attacks target the mount, attacks of opportunity are directed at the rider. This enables you to provoke the attacks of opportunity with your mount and still execute a full attack with the rider. Trickster Sneak, similar to Shrouded Step. Having a strong move action is certainly a compelling reason to get Vital Strike, but how does it measure up against full attacks in terms of damage per round when we disregard that benefit? Would you choose Vital Strike purely for damage output? A proper damage comparison is far from simple, as it heavily depends on factors such as class, party composition, and numerous other variables. There are simply too many moving parts to offer a universally applicable analysis. Therefore, we shall perform a more straightforward, albeit naive, comparison. We'll assume the same weapon, class, and buffs across the board, and simply examine how frequently damage is applied. Yes, this approach does have plenty of flaws, several of which I will discuss. The simplest method is to just assume that all attacks hit. In essence, we'll count the number of attacks and compare that to the Vital Strike multiplier. I've split the damage into 4 categories: weapon damage, which gets multiplied by both critical hits and Vital Strike, flat damage, which multiplies on critical hits, and eventually gets multiplied by Vital Strike once you get the mythic, sneak dice damage, which here includes both sneak dice and Vital Force, both sneak attacks and vital. Neither of which is multiplied on critical hits. And other extra dice, which also don't benefit from critical hits. Now, some clear issues arise. For instance, secondary attacks are made at the lower base attack bonus, while Vital Strike is a single attack at your highest base attack bonus. Additionally, the Vital Strike can only crit once, whereas multiple attacks in a full attack can crit multiple times. Let's suppose that your highest base attack bonus hits 50% of the time. I will select a critical range, in this case I selected one from the crossbow, and calculate from there. For a single attack, if you hit half the time, the value drops from 1 to 0.5. However, once we factor in critical hits, the result is slightly higher. Now let's look at the values for Vital Strike. You might wonder, why doesn't it double the output for weapon damage? Well, the reason for that is, again, that the Vital Strike multiplier and critical hits are additive. At base attack bonus 6, you gain a secondary attack, but this comes at a -5 penalty compared to your primary attack. Naturally, the lower hit chance of this secondary attack results in a reduced damage output compared to Vital Strike, whose single attack is made at the highest base attack bonus. And this gap only widens when facing enemies with higher AC. The next thing we can do is, rather than arbitrarily choosing a 50% hit rate, we can instead consider a range and calculate the average. I've chosen 2 ranges, one with hit chances from 20 to 80% and another representing more challenging circumstances from 50 down to 5%. Finally, to make the value comparison easier, we can also express the damage from full attacks as a percentage relative to Vital Strike. Let's clarify how the various damage categories I defined stack up against one another. The comparison table shows how many times each category is applied per round. But if we want to do a proper comparison, an understanding of their relative damage amounts is needed as well. The base weapon damage of some strong early game weapons, the glaive and the crossbow, is 1d10, both of these weapons are available early in the game. This damage can also be scaled up twice at level 1, first with Enlarged Person and secondly with either Lead Blades or Hurricane Bow. Note, however, that Lead Blades and Hurricane Bow are personal spells, available only to some classes. Lead Blades is particularly limited, accessible at level 1 only to Hunters, Clerics with the Artifice domain, and the Oriat race. After this point, there are no further opportunities to scale weapon damage until Legendary proportions late in the game, with no further increases beyond that. Weapon damage does not scale well over time. It does multiply on critical hits, which aids somewhat with late game scaling. As you progress, both the critical range and multiplier increase. However, this is insufficient to prevent it from being surpassed by pretty much all the other categories. Flat damage is an entirely different matter. It scales with ability modifiers, which you increase throughout the game through leveling, spells, and items. Crossbows are an exception. They do not benefit from ability modifiers. Then there are numerous other sources of additional flat damage. Many spells, for example, provide flat damage, and this damage also scales with caster level. Divine Favor, for example, progresses from +1 to +3. Just as weapon damage, flat damage also multiplies on critical hits, which is even more late-game scaling. Early on, the relative effectiveness depends on the weapon used. Flat damage will be high with the two-handed weapon, but low with the crossbow. However, as the game progresses, flat damage will almost certainly become the highest source of physical damage regardless of weapon used. Sneak attack dice primarily come from class levels, though there are a few other sources as well. The accomplished sneak attack, dagger feat, mythic sneak, certain mythic path abilities, Demon and Trickster, a DLC support class, the Inciter, that grants sneak attack dice to allies, are the ones that come to mind. You can accumulate a fair amount of sneak attack dice early by multiclassing into classes that gain sneak attack at level 1, such as Rogue, Vivisectionist, Assassin, but that comes a bit later due to its prerequisites. Also by getting the accomplished sneak attacker feat. Extra damage dice are virtually non-existent at level 1. At least I can't really think of any. However, as the game progresses, you get a fair amount, notably Bane, which can come from my item trades, Inquisitor class feature, Eon, possibly some other sources as well. Another common source of extra dice is Crusader's Edge, a level 4 cleric spell. Elemental extra damage dice can be mostly disregarded. They are frequently resisted or reduced to 0, particularly in the late game. Let's move on to the actual comparison. To clarify, we are comparing a 3/4 base attack bonus class using Vital Strike, incorporating Rowdy and Loremaster tips, with the same class staying pure and relying on full attacks. At level 1, Vital Strike effectively doubles or nearly doubles, accounting for criticals, the highest source of our damage, meaning our base weapon damage. And it also triples the value of the 1d6 sneak die we have from Rowdy. Rowdy is probably the strongest damage class at level 1 in the game. Level 3. Why do we see this -1 on our Vital Strike? Well, this comes from our Rowdy dip. One of the costs of dipping into a non-full base attack bonus class is a loss of base attack bonus. Note, however, that since our main class uses 3/4 base attack bonus progression, we are not always behind by 1 base attack bonus. The pure version reaches each dead level, where base attack bonus does not progress, a character level earlier. At those points, such as at level 5, our base attack bonus temporarily equalizes. One aspect absent from this comparison is the additional sneak attack die granted by Rowdy. At level 3, our main class gets its first sneak die, keeping both builds equal. At level 4, however, we gain an additional die, putting the Rowdy version ahead once again. Accomplice Sneak Attacker is a valuable feat early on. It adds yet another sneak attack die. We can get up to 3 sneak dice at level 4 this way. As such, Vital Force is exceptionally strong at these levels. We can also pick up Rapid Shot for bows and crossbows. Note that we are not comparing two-handed weapons to bows, as both function differently in ways beyond this stable scope. Instead, we're comparing bow versus Vital Strike bow, and two-handed weapon versus Vital Strike two-handed weapon. Returning to Rapid Shot. It will have a higher impact with composite bows over crossbows, as once again, flat damage is low for the latter. This distinction is partly why crossbows are often selected for Vital Strike builds and composite bows for full attack builds. Bear in mind that Rapid Shot does cost a feat, which may preclude taking Accomplice Sneak Attacker. For melee, the table remains largely unchanged, though our flat damage continues to scale. For instance, Bull Strength adds another +3. All things considered, Vital Strike is still strong, with Vital Force becoming more significant. While weapon damage remains static, the total number of sneak dice that can be potentially doubled by level 3 and tripled by level 4. At level 5 we gain access to haste, most likely through Nanio, which is quite the game changer. One of the inherent limitations of Vital Strike is its restricted scalability with buffs. What do I mean with that? So while full attacks benefit from a wide array of spells and class features that increase all the damage types in the stable, that increase critical range and critical multiplier, that add extra attacks, so haste. Vital Strike only scales well with increases to weapon damage, and it cannot benefit from extra attacks at all. Mythic Vital Strike does improve scaling for the flat damage bonuses, Vital Force for the sneak damage, but this only partly mitigates the issue. The more buffs we introduce into the equation, the less favorably Vital Strike will compare. To me, this suggests that Vital Strike is best in scenarios with limited spell access, such as when running with a smaller party to maximize experience gain. Turning to our main discussion. At this point, we definitely won't have abundant casting, making haste a precious and limited resource that also competes with heroism. In its absence, Vital Strike continues to perform admirably. When haste is available, however, it significantly boosts the performance of full attackers. For melee characters, haste equalizes weapon damage, still lags slightly behind in sneak damage, yet doubles flat damage, which, for two-handers, by this stage has become the largest source of damage among the 4 categories. For ranged characters, the numbers appear even less favorable due to the inclusion of Rapid Shot. However, once again, as far as the crossbow goes, it's less a big deal than it seems because it is unreliant on flat damage. At this level, Inquisitors also unlock Bane, adding 2d6 extra damage to their attacks, eventually increasing to 4d6. So a composite longbow Inquisitor would be far from an ideal candidate for a Vital Strike build. I'd also like to take a moment here to underscore why we are focusing on this particular comparison, so with the 3/4 base attack bonus classes and the dips. For a full base attack bonus class, taking Vital Strike through the usual means, Vital Strike won't even be available until the next level. Not only that, but the full attack version will also have an extra attack at level 6. As such, there's just not even a point in doing the comparison. It's gonna be so much worse. Level 6 is the earliest we can acquire Greater Vital Strike on the non-Rowdy version of the Loremaster build. The Rowdy version gets it a level later, at the earliest. How substantial is this power spike? While quadrupling weapon damage is impressive, the availability of haste once again changes things. Assuming the character is hasted, full attacks deal half the weapon damage in comparison to Vital Strike, but double the flat damage, which by this stage is the higher of the two. The damage remains similar and the extra move action is a considerable advantage, but it's not as powerful as one might expect from an ability obtained 10 levels earlier than usual. Well, usual for full base attack bonus characters. We can't even get it without Loremaster on a 3/4 pay base attack character. Thus the pivotal question resolves once again around our access to haste. In a full party we have Nino, we'll soon have abundant casting for Mythic 1. Additionally, a quest reward provides a long-lasting haste buff. Thus I'd be hesitant to go for Greater Vital Strike unless it complements a strong move action now or later on in the build. Conversely, if tackling Act 1 solo or with a reduced team, a strategy I find particularly good due to the abundance of easy-to-get early XP, we will reach level 6 well before the Grey Garrison, without Neo and certainly without abundant casting until much later. In this case, the Loremaster dip is good until at least level 9. At level 9, the Vital Strike build upgrades to Greater Vital Strike, even for half-casters. Meanwhile, the Pure build has already gained its second attack at level 8. By this point, access to haste is generally abundant, and depending on your main class, you may also have the personal buff Divine Power, which also grants an extra attack, though it does not stack with haste. For melee characters, Crusader's Edge provides an easy source of additional damage dice. Furthermore, Outflank is likely in play now, allowing critical hits to trigger extra attacks. Another advantage for full attackers who naturally crit more often. Bow users gain many shot, allowing the first shot in a full attack to fire 2 arrows. A feature exclusive to bows. Crossbows are incompatible. Note that this extra arrow does not crit and does not apply sneak damage. Despite the upgrade to Greater Vital Strike, keeping base with full attacks necessitates getting Mythic Vital Strike. And now we get to a further complication with our comparison table. If we grant the Vital Strike user a Mythic feat, we must also give Mythic options for the other builds. For instance, a 2-hander would likely get Mythic Power Attack, but those benefits can't easily be represented in our table. Ultimately, I've chosen a Flawless Attacks, admittedly a suboptimal Mythic feat. And for ranged, I went with Mythic Rapid Shot. It's a very good feat. Nevertheless, Mythic Vital Strike goes a long way in leveling the playing field in terms of damage per round, and parity favors Vital Strike as we retain the move action. Depending on our build, we may soon find this move action useful, if we haven't already. For instance, consider the Shadow Seaman. It trades hexes early on for sneak attack dice. Ordinarily, one would use the remaining hex to meet the Loremaster Metamagic prerequisite and play the character as the damage dealer, the main damage dealer. Then, once Vital Strike begins to plateau, one can use the new hexes that become accessible to get Eagle Eye and Chant, allowing a smooth transition to a more supportive role. Alternatively, we'll soon have our third Mythic level, giving access to our Mythic path and its special abilities. Perhaps a Demon Charge or Trickster Sneak to pair with our Vitals. At base attack bonus 8, characters will meet the prerequisites for improved critical. For the builds we are comparing here, this will happen after level 11. The increased crit range benefits full attackers more, especially with Outflank in play. At level 16, the pure 3/4 base attack bonus class, a character gains its third attack. By this point, we'll have access to a plethora of buffs, including, for example, transformation from a brown fur transmuter who could grant a character full base attack bonus progression at the cost of in-combat spellcasting, raising the total base attacks to 5. I've not included this in the table. Regardless, at this stage, we need something extra to make Vital Strike worthwhile. A powerful move action or a comparable advantage. In the past, the latter role was potentially filled by Evercold. It applied Vital Strike and the Vital Strike and the Mythic Vital Strike multipliers to the secondary bolt. Alas, this has been changed. Evercold remains a strong weapon for a Vital Force build, since the second bolt still carries a Vital Force damage, but it's far from the juggernaut it once was. One detail not reflected in this table is that some extra damage dice, such as Bane, will proc on the additional cold damage from Evercold, though this is of little relevance to Vital Strike, as we're not gonna be building a Bane Vital Strike build. That just doesn't make sense. True Strike is highly effective with Vital Strike. One could consider a sensei to provide team-wide True Strikes, potentially even building a team around this ability. It's an appealing idea, but not without the caveats. Choosing sensei comes at the cost of having another support. Consider a paladin, for example, who provides bonus AB to all attacks along with useful buffs and auras, and can function as a full base attack bonus damage dealer, unlike the sensei who, in contrast, can do little on the turn he grants to strike. So that's the comparison. Yes, a simplified one and many nuances aren't captured, but the main takeaway is this. Vital Strike shines in the early game, but gradually loses its relative power in later levels. To remain competitive, you'll either need to build around a strong move action or plan for a transition. So, what does the late game look like? In the past, Demon was the undisputed choice, and it's still a good choice. Babao provides some sneak attack dice for Vital Force, while Rock and Sihir offer minor bonuses to ranged and melee attacks respectively. The real power of all Demon lay in one of its major aspects, Colossus, which, as we've discussed previously, was once incredibly strong with Vital Strike. But how does it fare nowadays? Certainly, there are useful standard actions beyond the second Vital Strike. Indeed, most spells are cast as standard actions. However, very few spells are impactful without significant investment. For instance, if we aim to deal damage with Hellfire Ray, we'll need both spell penetration and ascended element just to ensure that the damage connects. At that level of investment, we might as well commit fully, but if we are fully committed to spellcasting, why are we using Vital Strike rather than just casting twice? These days, the best use of Colossus with Vital Strike is probably True Strike. Decent, but hardly thrilling. The Skari is very powerful if we are the primary damage dealer, since a large portion of our damage is precision damage, a type that several enemies are otherwise immune to. Yet we must ask, are we really going to be the main damage dealer by a large margin with Vital Strike in its current state? For melee Vital Strike builds, Demon Charge remains a genuinely fun option. Teleport into a cluster of enemies, unleash the AoE effect, Vital Strike, a weaker target, and watch the entire group explode into a gruesome display of viscera. It's effective area effect, exceptional at dismantling backlines, but somewhat less potent against bosses. It's one of the few builds where Demon Charge plays a major role, securing it a niche all its own, and of course it's great fun. For ranged builds, I was initially quite enthused upon seeing boots that seemed ideal for Vital Strike. Unfortunately, I then noticed the wording, ranks, not skill points, so it's only a +10 on the first attack, and only at level 20. It's still decent for Vital Strike, resulting in +40 extra damage. Now let's consider an example build, a Evercold Demon Shadow Shaman. With maximized sneak attack, this build can reach an impressive 108 d6 net sneak attack damage per vital strike. An impressive amount of dice, yes, but insufficient to carry the build on its own. So, let's make a sample damage calculation. You can read through the details yourself if you want. I'll go straight to the conclusion. Before the Colossus and Evercold Narrows, this setup would achieve around 1800 damage per round, assuming all attacks hit and no crits. Very impressive. Our current output? Not nearly as aspiring, hovering around 700, with almost half of that being sneak attack damage that isn't multiplied on crits. We can get more damage out of Trickster. Many move actions, such as Hexer's or Freebooter's Bane, serve as support abilities. Vital Strike lets you make full use of them, but it has a lower late-game damage potential compared to full attack builds. So, instead of attempting to multiply damage that already isn't as high, why not lean more into the support role? Choosing mythic abilities that benefit the entire team rather than just the Knight Commander. Trickster is ideal for this approach, offering a suite of mythic tricks that provides team-wide support. Reception 2 and World 3, for instance, strengthen companion and mercenary builds, while Arcane 2 and 3 have the potential to enhance everyone's weapons. Through Trickery 2, you assume the role of a debuffer, and so on. About half of Trickster's mythic tricks are of a supportive nature. All this while still holding up quite well in terms of personal damage. In fact, Trickster may be the best path for crossbow users. This is largely due to the Knowledge Arcana 2 mythic trick, which adds a random trait to items upon identification. One possible such trait is Agile, which allows a weapon, which can be a bow or a crossbow, to apply dexterity to damage. While not as strong as the patched Mythic Finesse and Fighter's Finesse exploits, which also treated crossbows as two-handed weapons, it's still very strong. Admittedly, the random nature of this trick means obtaining Agile on a specific weapon will require considerable safe scumming. Also, it won't work on vendor items as they are already identified. The exception to the former is Phidian, as you can reroll the traits indefinitely without any need for safe scumming. Another route is to transition out of Vital Strike entirely, for instance, shifting from a Vital Strike Horsemo build to a Hellfire Ray caster. There is a certain logic to this. Vital Strike is powerful in the early game, while Hellfire Ray excels in the late game. Both builds rely on dexterity for attack rolls, both benefit from precise shots, and neither require strength, freeing you to invest more comfortably in your casting stat for additional spell slots. Additionally, you're also already acquiring Meta Magic for Loremaster and are playing a caster class. However, there are issues to consider. Some early feats end up wasted. You'll forfeit the caster level due to the Rowdy dip. Sneak attack becomes largely irrelevant. Technically, you could use it with Arcane Trickster, though this does less damage than Bolster Spell. In my view, Arcane Trickster is most useful as a one-level dip to acquire Ambrosial Attire in the main campaign. But these points are relatively minor. The main drawback lies in the mythic requirements. A viable Hellfire Ray build demands mythic spell penetration, Ascendant Element, and double or triple abundant casting. If you're investing in Mythic Vital Strike as well, the transition point is delayed, not by character level, but by mythic level. This delay introduces further complications. The longer we stay with the crossbow, the more we'll need to invest into it. Take improved critical. You'll want to invest it on your crossbow, but in doing so, you have taken yet another feat that becomes redundant when you eventually switch to Hellfire Ray. Moreover, it's a late-game feat, so a much more significant loss. A potential solution to this latter problem is with Eldritch Archer, namely with Spell Strike at level 2. But let's go over the abilities in order. A single level in Eldritch Archer grounds spell combat, allowing you to cast a spell and then perform a full attack. This naturally does not work with Vital Strike. The spell must be on the Magus list, and it must be cast as a standard action. For example, if we dip Eldritch Archer on a spontaneous caster, We can use spell combat with regular Hellfire Ray, as it's also on the Makers list. However, we cannot use spell combat with the bolstered Hellfire Ray, as mathematics spells become full round actions for spontaneous casters. 2 levels in Eldritch Archer grant you Spell Strike, which enables you to deliver a spell through your weapon. This also makes a free attack at your highest base attack bonus with that weapon. It can be combined with spell combat to perform a full attack afterwards. Delivering the spell through the weapon affects how the spell's attack and critical rolls function. Namely, the spell inherits the crit range of your weapon. This has 2 implications. First, it means that investing in improved critical crossbow remains valuable even if you ultimately transition to Hellfire Ray, the solution to the drawback we touched on before. Secondly, the crit range for Hellfire Ray becomes significantly better. There are, however, 2 notable downsides. First, Spell Strike capture critical multiplier at 2. With Trickster, we could theoretically push this to 4 otherwise. If you're aiming for those high numbers late game with Trick Fate, this won't be achievable with Eldritch Archer. Secondly, and this is a bad one, the spell uses the weapon's attack roll rather than a ranged touch attack roll. Consequently, it targets the regular AC instead of the lower touch AC. Finally, there is a unique synergy with an Act 5 relic that applies fire vulnerability on a sneak attack. This relic makes use of the otherwise redundant sneak dice, as the crossbow bolt from the free Spell Strike attack will apply vulnerability, increasing the damage of the second and third rays of Hellfire Ray. Quite a neat synergy. Now, regarding mythic paths. Azata, Demon and Trickster all present viable options. I haven't looked into Azata beyond surface level, so I will be focusing on Trickster and Demon. Demon offers the potential higher damage cap. The Brimorak grants a decent amount of extra damage, while Colossus allows an additional Hellfire Ray per round via its move action. Trickster, by contrast, makes a late game transition smoother. With Ryu's magic device, we gain unlimited uses of the Rod of Magical Affinity, meaning we don't need to get bolster, and we can have another character wield the Growlmaster and similar rods. Since Rays can crit, Trickster also provides high damage potential with its crit feats and Trick Fate. That said, I wouldn't recommend building specifically around Trick Fate, as it's unlocked just before the end of the game. That was a crossbow exclusive transition, and not without its complications. But there is one mythic path where your early game feat choices are virtually irrelevant, provided you remain a pure divine caster, Merged Angel. Bolt of Justice and its area effect variant, Storm of Justice, interact with, well, almost nothing in the game. It's unaffected by spell resistance, so no need to invest into that. It doesn't require an attack roll, making dexterity, precise shot, and similar irrelevant. It lacks spell descriptors or elemental subtypes, meaning it doesn't scale with a feat or class abilities that affect those. All Bolt of Justice cares about is caster level and meta magics. Bolster spell primarily, as maximized and empowered spell can be handled via rods. Using meta magics to create them in the spell book would increase the spell level by a lot. You'll naturally have high caster level as an angel due to merging spell books, but if you truly want to maximize caster level, you can apply spell specialization to the same spell twice, once via regular feats and once again through Loremaster. This aligns perfectly with a mid-game Vital Strike build using Loremaster. You'll already acquire meta magic feats, such as Bolster or Extend to enhance angel buffs, and 2 more levels into Loremaster gives you the ability to double up on spell specialization. The feats invested in Vital Strike, irrelevant. Angel builds require very few feats. You could even stop using Greater Vital Strike at level 9 if you prefer not to spend the Mythic feat on Mythic Vital Strike, as this build will soon require Greater Abundant casting. This path is ideal for the Tempo Greater Vital Strike build I mentioned earlier, achievable at level 6. The class I'd recommend is Wildland Shaman, with hexes, solid buffs, an animal companion, along with Greater Vital Strike for damage. It's perfectly equipped to solo Act 1 for an XP boost leading into the normally more challenging late Act 1 and Act 2. Oracle is also an excellent option. It's weaker in the early game but has potentially higher survivability late game. Oracle into Angel is also one of the most popular builds in the game. Now, what kind of damage cap are we looking at? To truly maximize output, you'll want to convert the damage type to fire to take advantage of fire vulnerability. Whether this is at all necessary is another matter. You already deal a lot of damage without it. Again, I won't delve too much into the details here. You can refer to the slide for the specifics. The final damage, I calculated the pros is 1900, and with the Geomancy proc it will indeed hit that 1.9k mark. With the new DLC Mask and Quicken, we can cast 3 bolts per round, far exceeding the damage of the aforementioned Old Vital Strike demon build, the one that was patched out of existence. And the best part? It requires no attack roll and cannot be resisted. Cast a spell, deal the damage. You're effectively bypassing half the game's combat mechanics. That is Angel for you.